to, are we ready? Spirit Sessions,
Yes,
A View of the
go.
Lights, where we bring spiritual concepts and ideas and even sometimes paranormal into your everyday. And today is going to be a really awesome show. If any of you have ever listened to podcasts, this is a man that Rhonda has lovingly called the OG of the Paranormal Podcast. We're really excited to have him on today. Before we get to the show, we're going to ask you all to take a minute to share the show out, like it up, heart it up, invite your friends, anyone who might have even a little bit of interest in the paranormal. If you've had a ghost experience, a UFO experience, as we know a lot of us have, anything that you might call a little bit supernatural, this is a great place to hang out today and just listen. And he has an amazing voice. I'm just going to let you know it's a very soothing, amazing voice. Definitely a radio guy. And yeah, we're just excited to have him on. I actually first listened to a podcast this week, and it was his. It was my first ever. Never listened to a podcast before, and I couldn't stop listening. He has the Paranormal Podcast and Campfire, and it's great to listen to people call in with their stories of their own experiences with the paranormal. So yeah, this is going to be awesome. And whoever shares out today will win a reading with Rhonda. So share it out as much as you can to get that chance to win a reading. And we'll announce the winner of last week's Share It Out at the end of our show. So now, Rhonda, why don't you introduce our guest?
Good morning, everyone. When I first started listening to podcasts, because my daughter got me into them, I work in accounting, so I love listening to podcasts all day long as I'm typing in mindless numbers. I found Jim Harold's Paranormal Podcast, and I thought, oh man, this is just great, because he talks about everything I love. He talks about hauntings, he talks about UFOs, he talks about Bigfoot, which I find funny. Most people don't believe in Bigfoot, but they believe in the rest. The most evidence is with Bigfoot, but that's just me. But Jim's voice, you got to have the right voice before I'll listen to you. And Jim has a super voice, and he has super guests, and I can't wait till the next one that I can download. So I'm always caught up, which is kind of sad during the week. But now I listen to his Campfire, which is also an excellent podcast. So, Jim, how did you get into this? And you're like our kind of guy. So how did you decide that this is what you were going to do?
Well, first of all, let me thank you all for inviting me on the program. A great honor. I appreciate it. I started back in 2005. I've been a frustrated broadcaster in the sense that I worked in the media industry on the business side. I'd gone to school to be in front of the mic or in front of the camera, and ended up on the business side. In 2005, I heard about this thing called podcasting, and I listened to some great professional podcasters like or at that time, there were no professional podcasters, but professionals who podcasted. Adam Curry, who you might remember from MTV, was really one of the co-inventors of podcasting. And then Leo Laporte, a great tech journalist. And I said, you know what? I saw that people were not at that level, but doing it out of their home and so forth. And I said, even if I can't be a professional broadcaster, I'm going to do this as a hobby. And I thought about things I loved, and one thing that always appealed to me, going back to being a real little elementary school kid in the 1970s, was In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. And, of course, I grew up as well watching Unsolved Mysteries. And then, of course, Coast to Coast, starting in the 90s with the great Art Bell. I'm like, well, I don't see a lot of paranormal podcasts out there, and I'm curious about these things. I'm not an expert, but I always read the books and anything I can, watch television shows, listen to radio shows. Somebody ought to do a really well-done podcast on the paranormal. And that's how I started in 2005, and there were hardly any podcasts on the paranormal. I think maybe Gene Steinberg was doing his show. But other than that, there wasn't much. And I said, I'm going to try it. And that was 2005. Really did it as a hobby. Got a little more serious around 2009. And then 2012, I ended up going full-time, and I've been full-time podcasting ever since.
Wow, that's incredible. And really, when you think, I think you said 36 million downloads, I think I read. And you're in the top 2%, because if you ever go and look at the lists of podcasts, there are thousands. hundreds of thousands, and you're in the top 2%. So you should be so proud of that accomplishment. It's just wonderful. And you're the first guy when you get the best title. Like when anybody types in Paranormal Podcast is the one that pops up. And I love how you've expanded into all the other things I like, which my guilty pleasures, true crime too.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Thank you.
What kind of you said you were interested, you were like that kid that always goes to the paranormal section in the library, and I know we can all identify with that. Probably a lot of our viewers can identify with that. You just write, yes, you guys. We have people from all over right now coming in. We have someone from the Faroe Islands watching you. Do you know where the Faroe Islands are?
Yeah.
I know. And we have, let's see, I don't know if we have Christy Sanders in, Cindy Aldridge. We have people usually dropping in from Australia, and Kathy Holmeyer from just upstate New York is in today. Thanks, Kathy. And Cindy Kluman's here. If you just drop in where you're coming from. Hi, Christy. Hi, William. Drop in where you're coming from, because Jim's new to our show. So let him know where he is, so he knows he's getting across the world. What kind of experiences have you had with the paranormal personally? I know you've talked to thousands of people about it, but what has really piqued you personally?
Well, I kind of joke that I'm sensitive as a board. I don't, get psychic hunches per se for the most part, although there was one case. And I don't see full body apparitions or anything like that, but I tend to experience weird synchronicities. And I can give you two of them that happened to me. One was back in 1999. My younger brother had passed. He lived out of town. He was very young. He would have been at that point 27 years old, about ready to turn 28 in a few months. He was autistic, and he died of pneumonia, and it was very sudden, unexpected, very sad. So anyway, I was coming home from his funeral, and my family, I was born and raised in Ohio, but my parents were originally from West Virginia, and they went there when they retired, and they took him with them. And I was driving back, and I was flipping through different stations on the radio. Now, this is 1999, before MP3s and podcasts and iPods. You basically had the radio, or if you were really fancy, a CD in your car. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I was flipping through the stations. I came through what they used to call, and you don't hear them much anymore, but the music of your life stations. Mm-hmm. And those are stations with Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Nat King Cole, people like that. And I like that music in addition to a lot of other music, rock and so forth. And I put it on. It was through one of these places, when you're traveling through and you get a station for 10 or 15 minutes and it fades away and you got to find another station. Yes. So they were playing this instrumental. And I'm like, that's familiar, but that's something I don't hear on the radio. That is so weird. So I kept trying to place it, and I was like, what is that? And who is that? Because that's a really familiar band. Now, you've got to know my younger brother had really diverse musical taste. He liked everything from, soul, like if you remember the old Soul Train show back in the day. He loved that show. He loved country music. He loved all kinds of different music. But maybe his favorite was, of all things, Lawrence Welk. Do you remember Lawrence Welk?
Nice. Oh, I do. Yeah, I do.
So anyway, 2 and 3. Yep. And I mean, who at that age would really be into Lawrence Welk? But anyway, so I kept thinking, what is this instrumental? What is this instrumental? Now, I'm driving along, and the DJ comes on what we call the back announce. And he says, of course, that is Lawrence Welk with his big hit, Calcutta, from 1960. Now, to me, I just got like chills thinking about it now.
Yeah,
what were the chances? First of all, when was the last time you heard Lawrence Welk on the radio? And even back then, and I had to be driving in that particular little stretch where that station came on. I happened to find it. I happened to decide to stay on it. It's not like, at the time, if you would have heard a Michael Jackson song, I mean, it was all over the radio, or U2 or something like that. This was a very specific thing that had a very specific meaning. I mean, if it had been Glenn Miller playing, it would have had no meaning.
Right.
You know, so I guess my point is, to me, that was a sign. And there was an
Yeah.
even more dramatic one about a year and a half ago for me. I'd been asked to be on a paranormal cruise with people like Micah Hanks and Rosemary Ellen Guiley. If you know her, she's tremendous. And anyway, I had a cold. You know, go figure, get to go on this great cruise.
Yeah.
And I had
Right.
So we had one day, the day we were at sea, we were all giving presentations on different supernatural topics. Rosemary did one on gin, and I did one on black-eyed kids, that whole weird phenomena.
Ooh.
So anyway, my throat was bothering me, and I said, well, we would have breaks. Before the next session, I'm going to go over to the cafe over here and get coffee. So I stepped out of the door, and you had to walk through the casino to get to the cafe because this ship had a casino on it. So anyway, I saw one of these claw machines. You know how they have in the drugstores and stuff where you get the stuffed animals and things down? Well, to me, there's one overriding association that goes with those, and that's my late uncle. My late uncle died about 5.5, almost 6 years now, 6 years ago. And he was like my second dad. He lived with us growing up. I mean, he was literally my second dad. And he passed, and I thought about him, and I'm like, man, I wish he were here. He would love that, because he would be the kind of guy that would go and play one of these claw machines and spend $10 to win a 99-cent stuffed toy, just for the sport of it.
Right.
He really loved him. I don't know why. But anyway, I was thinking of him so intensely, and I said, boy, I wish he were here. All of a sudden, and the funny thing is that what doubly got my attention, the person playing the claw machine at the time was one of the attendees of our cruise group. One of the people who was in our group. So that was kind of weird. And then this woman walks up next to this guy, and she says, John. Guess what my uncle's name?
Oh no! Wow.
Wow.
John.
Yeah.
And she was calling her husband or whatever. Now, you tell me, is that and I'm getting chills just thinking, is that a coincidence?
You know,
Yeah,
that's how this stuff works. It's like you listen, you hear, and they manifest it. They put it whatever way they can get to you.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, if you got a full-bodied apparition of even your brother in front of you, most people would be very uncomfortable with that. And so they come the way they can, and they come the way that you will hear them, whether it's in your dreams or where it's like that, in the music or in that, and you're going, you brought them so close, just thinking about them.
Yeah. Two quick other ones. That one happened to me, and one that happened to my wife. This was back when I was young. This would have been probably 1990. So I would have been about 20 years old. And I was visiting my family down in West Virginia, some of my grandparents and so forth, or some of my cousins. And there was this young lady who had, in the local neighborhood, had taken notice of me. So we were walking and talking. And we were walking by this large log truck. You know, the big trucks that carry the logs with the big chains and things?
Yeah.
And I walked past it, and something told me, get away from this thing. So I kind of sped up my walk. She walked on one side, I walked on the other, like bread and butter, and came back around. So we're walking about 15 feet as we get past it. I hear a big rumble. The chains are broken, and almost all of these huge, huge logs fell off on the side where I was walking.
Holy cow.
Now again, coincidence? You know, and the skeptic would say, well, maybe on some subconscious level you heard a chain starting to creak. But It's like, come on, something told me to be away from it. I really believe that.
Yeah, and that's like a major fear. Sorry, that's just a major fear that people have now since the Final Destination movies, is being around those trucks, because that happens in the movie. And you had it.
Well, this was 1990, so this was probably
way before.
And then the last one I'll tell you about was my wife's experience, which I think is very profound. My mother-in-law had been very, very ill and had at-home hospice in 2001, right before 9/11. And she had been home a day or two, and that one particular evening, at that point, we had my daughter, who now just started her second year of college, but she was a baby at the time. And my wife was over there attending to my mother-in-law, kind of keeping her company. And that night, my mother-in-law kept pushing her away, saying, "You got to go home. You've got the baby. You've got Jim. You've got to get over there. You've got to be with your family." Like she didn't want her around. But there was no feeling that anything was imminent in terms of her passing. We thought it was going to be maybe weeks. We thought we had some time. So anyway, my wife and I go to bed, and it's about, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And my wife wakes up, and this is before I'm paranormal podcasting or anything like that. And that's, except for one of the stories that I just told you, all of them were before I was doing what I do now. Anyway, she looks over my shoulder, and my mother-in-law was a devout Catholic, and she was really big on the Mother Mary, which is important to this story. So my wife looks over my shoulder. I'm asleep, and I'm kind of one of those dead-to-the-world sleepers. When I'm asleep, I'm asleep. She looks over, and she says she sees over my shoulder Mother Mary. And she says that she's glowing, and she's the most beautiful thing she's ever seen, and very much unlike what you see in pictures and so forth, but very peaceful and so forth. And she was there for maybe 20, 25 seconds, and then she just disappeared, and my wife went back to bed. 15, 20 minutes later, the phone rings. It's my father-in-law. And he simply says, "She's gone." And my wife's like, "Who's gone? What are you talking about?" "Your mother. She just passed away about 20 minutes ago."
Wow.
Yeah. So, but to illustrate, those are the kind of stories that people share on my Campfire podcast. People call in. I don't really screen the calls. People just fill out a form saying, "Hey, I want to tell my story." We don't, as I said, I was explaining to you guys before, nobody coaches people. Nobody tells them to make it more exciting or less exciting. We just say, "Tell your true story." So just kind of, we just did a mini Campfire, just with my stories, and that's what we do on the programs.
That's
Very cool. Yeah. And I love that people can call in from all over. And, if you've had experiences and you can hear other people that have also had experiences, it makes you feel like you're not losing your mind so much, Cool to have other people to relate to. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, and quite frankly, I never thought of that as one of the benefits of this show, or one of the things that would be important, because I just thought, oh, this is going to be entertaining. This is going to be interesting to see people's experiences. But so many people have said, "Jim, X happened to me." And before I heard, Ruth from Chicago tell her experience, I thought I was the only one. I thought maybe there was, and I hate to use this phrase, but maybe I was crazy. Mm-hmm. And I think that one thing that the show does is kind of comfort people in the sense to know that there are other people like them all over the world experiencing similar things.
It's a paranormal support group. There you go.
Yeah, and I don't claim. Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at it that way now. I don't claim to be anything clinical or anything like that. Right. Absolutely not. I'll leave that to medical professionals. But I do think it does comfort people to know that other people experience similar things.
It for sure does. And that's one of the reasons we do our show, is because we bring on people from all different modalities so they can understand, and they can understand, like, a lot of people have gifts that watch this and they go, "Oh, that's what I'm doing. That's what's happening to me." Right. And I think the whole world is waking up more to all their extra gifts, because let's face it, we don't have to worry so much about where our food is coming in. We're not out there slaving in the coal mines anymore, and we're not,
right.
So we have time to start thinking about other things, more spiritual things, and maybe more things like with our own insider gifts. So maybe that's what technology has freed us up to do. And also the fact that you and I and Teresa and Bax are talking, and we got people from Missouri and people from the UK on, and we're talking all over this. Maybe now we can understand energy is everywhere. And just the fact that we can do this, there's a lot more than you can see out there, right? Jim, what else do you have going on? You have the Campfire. You have another program. You have a true crime program too. What's that called?
Give us some of your digs. Yeah, I have my free shows, the Paranormal Podcast, interviews with authors and experts in all area, the very broad definition of the paranormal, everything from ghosts to UFOs, cryptids, and all that. Then I have Campfire, true stories of the supernatural from callers. And again, that runs the gamut, everything from ghosts to cryptids to UFOs. Then I have Jim Harold's Crime Scene, which is my true crime podcast, because I've always been fascinated by that. And we've had Pulitzer Prize winners on that show. The show I'm really excited about now, and I don't even know if we've talked about it. I just started this year with my wife. It's called Soulmate Stories. And what that is where people call in and tell their story of how they connected with their soulmate. And that's getting quite a reaction. And then I have a whole series of premium shows that people, if they really listen to my main shows and say, you know, I really like these, I'd like more, I have a Plus Club where you can access another 1,700 plus episodes that I've done over the years. But I really say for people who have never heard of me or heard of the shows, don't worry about that. Just go and check out the free shows. There's plenty to listen to there. And down the road, should you say, hey, I really like this and I want to get more, that's great. But we have new free episodes every single week and an archive of free episodes you can listen to anytime at jimharold.com and on any of the podcast apps. Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. I have my own free app, Jim Harold Spooky Studio, for Apple, Android, and Amazon Fire devices. And then I have 5 books that are based on my Campfire show. That's at jimharoldbooks.com. That'll take you to give you all the Amazon links, and those are available electronically and also available in paperback. So, and those rank about 4.5 stars in terms of ratings out of 5 on the Amazon store. And you can get one of those books on Kindle for as low as $2.99. And sometimes I run sales and you get it cheaper. So we have a lot. If you're interested in the supernatural, you know, it's kind of a buffet, and there's a lot there to dig into.
Now, you've told us your stories. Now, who is the favorite? Now, what are you super interested in? Since you've been doing a lot of these paranormal podcasts, I don't know if you're a UFO guy, if you're a cryptid guy, what kind of a buff are you in the paranormal?
I'm kind of all of it. I mean, I'm truly interested in all of it. I think the one topic that I'm the most interested in is the afterlife. Because, as I often say, we might not all see a UFO, we might not all see a cryptid or even a ghost, but I can tell you one thing, and I hate to be the one to break it to everyone, we're all going to die. Hopefully many years from now, in terms of at least physically, we're going to die. So the question is, what lies beyond? Personally, I believe there is an afterlife. I think we do live on. I don't think this is the end. Boy, if it were, I think that'd be pretty depressing. So I choose to believe, and based on a lot of different things, I believe that there is afterlife. Now, you asked, I know we only have a certain amount of time. You asked about a favorite campfire story. I do have a favorite one I'd like to share.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, we got about 5 minutes. Yeah. Okay,
I'll make it quick. Okay, this is a listener named Sandy, great listener. No, I'm getting my people mixed up. T.I. from Michigan. And she was out with a friend, a male friend, to go. His name was Bob, and they were going to see a band, okay? And this was in a rural area up in Wisconsin. And they had closed down the place, and they knew some people in the band, so they were talking. So it was very late. It was after 2 o'clock in the morning. So Bob and T.I. leave, and they're driving around this 2-lane highway, and it's very dark, and T.I. says they had about an hour to get home. I have to answer nature's call. And he said, well, there's always the bushes. And she said, no, drive fast, drive fast. So they come upon this bar, this roadhouse, kind of standing alone. It's lit up with neon and lights are on, and they're like, that's weird. That kind of place would be closed normally after 2 o'clock in the morning. But let's not look a gift horse in the mouth. Let's go in. So they went in. There were a lot of people there. There were cars in there, and the people kind of looked a little odd because they didn't talk much. But anyway, said, hey, we're here. They've got facilities. We'll get a couple light drinks here. And they did that. T.I. goes into the restroom, comes back. They're sitting, enjoying their drink. And Bob says, I'm really glad we're here because there's this mural that was painted by a famous artist, and it's of the Old West. And there's like the swinging doors, and there's a bar, and there's people. There's a bartender, and there's different people. And they notice that the people in the painting look just like the people in the bar.
I knew it.
And they're kind of like,
Say that.
they're like, well, that's weird. Well, maybe the artist, these are regulars, right? And the artist did this as like an homage to them. So anyway, another weird thing happens is this guy comes up to T.I. and asks her to dance. And T.I. has a cane. She walks with a cane, so she shows him the cane and begs off and says, no, I can't dance. And they were playing on the old-style vinyl jukebox, Chubby Checker's Let's Twist Again, if you remember that. Let's Twist Again.
Yes.
So anyway, she said she was really glad she had the cane to show him to politely decline because the guy had like these rotted brown teeth. It was not good. So anyway, they're singing, they're drinking their drink, and they're looking at the wall, and they're looking at those swinging doors like you used to see in the old, when the gunslinger would come in and say, I'm looking for Bart, that kind of thing. And they, kind of like an old Polaroid picture, they said they started to see two figures materializing, two like mist. And they kept looking at it, and they looked at it a little more, and it looked a little more developed, and one was taller and one was shorter. And then they looked away, and they looked again, and one had curly hair and boots and a cane. And the other one was a male. They realized they were developing into the picture.
Wow.
Now, a couple intros. So they said, okay, we're leaving now. They get up. They're walking out, and the people are beckoning them to come back in. And they walk out. When they walk out, there's a car in the parking lot. There is a car, one car, their car.
Wow.
They look back. Everything in the place is closed down, dead, like it was never open. So they pull out. That's not the end of the story. Not the end of the story.
Oh my
So
God.
T.I. is much braver than I am, so she goes with a friend a couple of days later. And she says, I'm going to check this out, see what this place is all about. They go, and it's earlier in the evening, like 7, 8 o'clock. There is a woman behind the bar. And now I should have said in the first one, there was a young, burly, good-looking bartender. I forgot to say that. So anyway, she says, hey, I was here the other night. Where's that good-looking bartender that was here? And she said, nobody like that here. The only two bartenders are me and my elderly father. And then she looked for the jukebox. Well, there's a jukebox there. Didn't have any chubby checker on it. And it was a modern CD jukebox. Now, so she left. Now, here's the kicker. This place really exists. And another listener, two listeners have actually gone there and taken pictures, and the mural is there. Now, there's no materialized figures in it. In fact, I think part of the mural was gotten rid of, so the one with the swinging doors isn't there, but the bartender piece is still there. And I think it was a week or two ago, one of my listeners went and took pictures of them standing by the mural. So it is a real place.
Wow.
And
That's
seems
pretty
very
creepy.
sincere.
Yeah.
I mean, that is Twilight Zone worthy.
Yeah,
That is
That's sort of like you walked into a portal or something.
Yeah, it's another
Yeah, I
dimension.
know.
like an alternate universe.
Yep.
Creepy. That's now. Believe me, most of our stories are nowhere near that elaborate. But
Right.
there's some creepy ones, and that's probably my all-time favorite campfire story.
That is cool.
Wow.
I would not
She
want to go
was-
near that mural.
No, Bex, you have a question for Jim.
I do.
Our
So
new question.
our new question that we ask all of our guests: if you had to pick a theme song, the theme song of your life, what would it be?
I think it would be My Way by Frank Sinatra.
Ah,
And the reason is because when I started to, because I'm assuming, and again, I'm 49 and holding, but I'm assuming this
Just a
is kind of my
youngster.
life's, this is kind of my life's work. And I assume this is what I'm going to do for pretty much whatever time I'm on the earth. Maybe I'll do additional things, but I'm almost think I'm going to be podcasting. And I remember starting when I was simultaneously looking at working in radio, and people would look at me like, podcast, you're wasting your time. I mean, they wouldn't say it, but you get the idea. They'd be like, oh, that's nice. Let me pat you on the head. And when there were all the naysayers, and now podcasting is the hot thing. So I kind of cut my own path, and it's not to pat myself on the back too much, but I did kind of go against the grain and do something that other people weren't doing. So I think that fits with my way. And that song, people will think, oh, that song is always like braggadocious. But I look at it as just somebody saying, you know, I lived my life and I did the way that I wanted to do it. Sometimes I was right. Sometimes I was wrong, but it was my way. So that's why. And I Teresa, I'm sorry, it wasn't a rock song.
No, I accept that one.
But that's, you know, again, that's what we're all learning to do now, is to carve our own paths, you know. And maybe some people have done it before, but we're learning to do everything in our own unique way.
Yeah, I think
that's
so.
awesome.
And I kind of, and it took me a long time to get to this in my life because I always wanted to please other people. But I think at some point, as long as you're being ethical and you're not hurting other people, you've got to do what's right for you, because you've got, you know, depending on your belief, you've got this shot, you know, you're here now, you know, you can do this, you can take advantage of the time that you have. And goodness knows there's so many people out there who think, you know, they got a long life ahead of them and something tragic happens. So as long as you're treating other people as well and ethically and so forth, I think you should try to carve out your path and make yourself happy, because you can live in service to other people, but I think you have to be happy yourself. So I think it's important to do what speaks to you as the right thing, and that's what I think I've done with these shows.
You're providing your own service to lots and lots and lots, 36 million downloads, because you are doing a service for humanity. And we're in service when we do the things we love the best. Really, we are. That's how we serve the best, is when we do what we love the best. And we do it with all our heart. So, Teresa, I know you've got the announcements again, because you're like the best announcement person.
Rhonda, no, thank you. No, and for the record, I do acknowledge and appreciate the rock and roll era. I used to listen to a lot of that. My great aunt actually knew a lot of the people, not all of them, but some of the main people, and so she used to tell us interesting stories. So I acknowledge that and there. But and the other thing I wanted to tell you is I did see somebody with the black eyes before, like you were talking about, and it was a gang member riding by on a bike, and I was on a bus, and I saw his eyes were completely black, and then he shook his head, and then they went back to normal again.
Wow.
And it was like, I don't know what the heck, and that was before I met Emily and all you guys, so I didn't even have anybody to ask about that one, so I'm glad you brought it up. It's like, okay, maybe I wasn't so crazy.
Yeah, if you want to look that up, the guy who knows the most on that is a gentleman by the name of David Weatherly, and I would look up David Weatherly. Yeah, he's an expert. He's great. So I would look him up. Yeah. Interesting subject, though. One of the creepier ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went for sure creepier.
Yeah. So I loved all the stories, and I loved all that, and I love all of us in the groups and our people that come to see us. It's just so much fun doing this show. So for the announcements, we've enjoyed already Amanda Marie this morning on her Elevated Living with Emily Harrison this morning. And then coming up in just a little while, like half an hour or so, is Kathy Holmeyer with multidimensional, Nourish Your Multidimensional Body. And I believe that our friend Krista is going to be a guest on that show. I'm not sure. I got to check it out and find out. And then later today, the most amazing show is the Cosmic Ascension Report with Janelle Cameron. And if you're going through symptoms and you're thinking you're sick, listen to Janelle first, because she has some amazing information and guidelines or whatever to show you that maybe you're just going through some symptoms and you're not really sick. You know, the headaches and all the different things that we're going through are all a part of what we're going through, and so it's beautiful. And then tomorrow we have a show with Sarah Lillian So be sure to join us. The Akashic Academy has shows every day of the week. They're positive shows. They're shows about interesting stuff like this. And it's good. And it's an alternative to everything else you could watch out there. So come and enjoy that. And then don't forget that you can join the Akashic Academy. And we've got a secret membership group you can join too. So you're going to want to check that out. And there's the Akashic Academy magazine. So there's so many things, all for your spiritual enlightenment and help and positivity. So it's so cool. And the winner, whoever shares it out the most this week, I know, I totally forgot. No, but the winner, whoever shares it and hearts it and shares it out the most this week will win an amazing session. An Akashic, how do you call it, Rhonda? Akashic
I do a healing through the Akashic records.
That's it.
Yeah.
Healing through the Akashic records with Rhonda Elliott, my friend who I love, and who shared it out last week the most wins with me. And who was that? You guys told me it was Krista. Synchronista with Krista. And Krista is the one person in this lifetime that reminds me so much about the Christ love and the Christ energy, because she's always saying transcendent love, when she makes comments and all that. That transcendent love is the Christ energy. And so every time Krista makes that comment, that's my personal reminder to do that. So Krista, my friend, you win a session with me, whether you want an Akashic session, an angel healing, because I can do that now, or a channeling, or you want a card reading. Whatever you want, my friend, it's yours. So let's get together and do that. It'll be fun. Anything else, everybody? What else is coming on?
I think that's it.
No.
Oh, we have next week.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Let me look it up.
Next
week?
Anxiety and depression with Kimberly Wirtz.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big one.
Oh, you don't want to miss that. Yeah, you guys don't want to miss it. If you get seasonal depression, if you ever get, I get it in the summertime, not the winter, but if you get seasonal depression, we're going to have a healing going on for that. And so that's really going to uplift you. So come and enjoy that.
It'll be exciting.
Yeah, we'll have Kimberly Wirtz again, which is so much fun.
Thank you so much, Jim. This was
yes,
awesome.
thank you, Jim.
I look forward
and we're going to put
more. Yeah.
JimHarold.com. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. And thank
we're
you.
We're going to put all your links in the thing, and I'm sure we'll up your subscription level by at least 200. Let's see.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
We'll
talk to you again. Hopefully we can have you again on.
Yes.
That'd be great. I'm going to see you all next week.